Hold still! You lied to me, you lied to me! In the face, in my face. Put it in the peanut butter. In the face, in my face, in the face, in my face. In the face, in my face, in the face.
I thought you said this guy was a Christian. What is this?
Liberate tu me.
Hey, Peter Franson from Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central here with part 2 of my tour of my bookshelf requested by a viewer a while back. So here we go. We left off at, and I'm only giving myself about 10 minutes again. I got a clunky timer that'll be roughly 10 minutes. Let's see here. Okay, so last time we covered the Flash TV series, Daredevil Director's Cut. Now down to here. This is where I keep various bits of like Christian fiction. So we've got the Black Earth series by my friend David Alderman. We've got Frank Peretti's Darkness series, or the 2 books anyway. I don't know if you call that a series. This was a really... this is a great series. I think it goes by the Chronicles of the Door now, by Gene Edwards. But it's... oh, no. I think it's called the... I can't remember what it's called now. It's got a different subtitle. It's not called The Chronicles of the Door. I think it's called The Chronicles of Heaven now, maybe. But anyway, Gene Edwards, The Beginning, that series along with Peretti's Darkness series definitely were influential on the Spirit Blade trilogy, because both books deal with things going on in the spirit world that parallel things happening in the physical world. And the Darkness series is about modern events happening with spiritual warfare going on between angels and demons in the spirit realm. And then the Chronicles of the Door series is basically the story of the Bible, these key moments in the Bible, and what was going on with the angels and with God while all these events were taking place, and how that was interfacing with what we see in the biblical accounts. So we've got the beginning, which is about the garden. You've got the escape, which is about Exodus, the Exodus story. We've got the birth, which is about the birth, the incarnation of Jesus, and the triumph, which is about the cross. And the resurrection, and then the return, which is about the events of the book of Revelation. And they're not terribly, they've got pretty large margins, and the point size isn't, really small. So, and the chapters are really short, so they're actually pretty easy to get through. But they have just some beautiful poetic writing and language. I mean, I would highly recommend checking that out. And then beyond that, we've got a few more Christian fiction works. We've got Noah Primeval by Brian Godawa, who I interviewed on the Spirit Blade Underground podcast, and of course Untold by Nathan James Norman of the Untold podcast. Let's see here, and then we got Demon by Tosca Lee. I've also interviewed her on the show. Starfire by Stuart Von Stockton. I always have trouble remembering that name. I can't remember if I've interviewed Stuart or not. And then lastly, The Strange Man by Greg Mitchell, who I've interviewed on the show. Let's see here, moving down. Okay, so now we get into a little bit more theological type stuff, I guess. We've got the Pilgrim's Progress, three different editions of the Pilgrim's Progress, which I used during my adaptation for episode 1 of that series, and will continue to use as I move forward after releasing A World of Shadows. And then we got, of course, C.S. Lewis. Man, I've had those books since, I want to say like junior high, I've had those books. And yeah, it's been a long time since I've read them, but I keep them on the shelf because I think you're kind of supposed to, aren't you? His writing these days is a little bit dry for me, but I imagine the next time I read these, it'll be when I read them to my boys. And then also C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet. I really tried to read his sci-fi book series a number of years back. Again, it was kind of dry for me. Maybe I was just expecting a different experience, so I'll probably come back to those at some point. It's kind of on my bucket list. Now into nonfiction, we've got Dr. Henrietta Mears' classic, What the Bible is All About, which I would recommend as just kind of a nice way to acquaint yourself with the Bible, or maybe kind of develop a reading plan to get through the Bible. Sorry, I know that with the lighting, you can't really see really well here. Is there a flashlight handy? Oh, here we go. Boom. All right. I'll try to do indirect light because direct light is going to be way too bright. So yeah, then we got My Utmost for His Highest, which I used that a lot through college, and that's actually the updated edition. In college, I was reading the original, kind of really old English sounding version, but this one I'll still come back to every now and then. I think there's some good thoughts there. I haven't read Packer's God Has Spoken. I've read Packer's what is, I can't remember the other one. I think it's on my wife's bookshelf right now. Knowing God. I've read Packer's Knowing God, which was one of the first books I got into that was kind of like a book on theology. That was before I was getting into like reading theology textbooks. So it was a nice kind of introduction to some theological concepts. And then Stott's Basic Christianity. I'm trying to think. I think he maybe had some funky views on hell, but I don't think they were expressed in that book. But I've just kept that. The college group that I was in went through that book at one point, and so I just kind of held on to that copy. R.C. Sproul's Essential Truths, 100 Essential Truths of the Christian Faith. And that's a good read. I mean, he's definitely coming from like a Calvinist view, a strong Calvinist view. And so like there's not every single fine detail in there that I would agree with, but I still think it's a really good book and a pretty easy read. Short chapters, most of them just one page. So if you're looking for just kind of an introduction to just like the basic teaching of the Bible, I don't think that book is really going to lead you astray. I mean, the things that I disagree with on him are I think pretty small issues. And then we've got the Confessions of St. Augustine, which I have not read all the way through. Where did I leave off? Right about there, where that little, you can't see it, but that little crack there, I think there's a bookmark in there. So I suppose that's kind of on my bucket list. The Names of God, haven't used that. It's more of a reference thing, just kind of handy. I don't really use that a whole bunch. Okay, we got to move down here. Cosmic Christmas by Max Lucado. Screwtape Letters, haven't read all the way through. What is this? Oh, The Facts on Homosexuality by Ankerberg and Weldon. The Signature of God. Let's see here. That one's okay. That one gets into kind of like the Bible code phenomenon a little bit, which I have mixed feelings about. Guinness Book of World Records. I bought the Guinness Book of World Records, just a copy of it, because I wanted to see what the human physical limits were. So that was kind of like my interest just in, and I bought it's like a 50-cent copy at a used bookstore, because I wanted to kind of look and see, you know, okay, should Batman really be able to get away with what he gets away with, you know? Let's see here. Who Needs a Superhero? That's a book I would recommend, I think. Brewer, last name Brewer of the author, and it talks about comic books. Now, it doesn't really jump on the superhero movie bandwagon. It was before really the Marvel superhero movies came out that was published, but it really just kind of looks at the various popular superhero characters in both DC and Marvel comics, and just talks about how they represent Christ in some way, how they are a working out of our desire for a Savior, and for which Christ is the real and ultimate model. And then similar books along that line, The Gospel According to the World's Greatest Superhero by Skelton, comic book character, which I think is similar to Who Needs a Superhero, but is not as strong. That's by Zimmerman. And then The Man from Krypton by White. And that one was actually based on the first one or two Christopher Reeve Superman movies. It's an old book that came out during that time and was giving commentary on those. I think that's still a decent read. I can't remember if I read it all the way through. I'm not sure. But, you know, if you just are kind of like a film buff and a superhero film buff, because I think the Christopher Reeve movies, especially, you know, might be a little bit tough to watch today in light of Man of Steel. We have just such a better modern, you know, as far as visual effects and stuff goes, Superman experience that we can have today. But I mean, if you're still into and are willing to sit through and be interested in the old Christopher Reeve Superman movies, I think The Man of Krypton by White might be worth hunting down on Amazon. And then you got Velvet Elvis by Rob Bell, 2 books, and then also Love Wins. My wife and I went through Velvet Elvis and found it to be an interesting but kind of, you know, fluffy. I was kind of wanting more substance. I wanted him to kind of say things and commit to ideas and then actually back them up instead of just kind of appealing to emotion. I think Rob Bell kind of does that a lot. He's not, I don't think in his writing, does not present really logical
arguments for his views. He just kind of tries to appeal to emotion, especially in Love Wins, which is basically a refutation of the idea that hell lasts forever. Yeah, that book was getting a lot of buzz for a while, and I just can't subscribe to it. Now, I also don't subscribe to a lot of the common ideas about hell that people naturally have, and there's a video on that on the Christian Geek Central channel you can check out called "Is Hell Really What We Think It Is?" So, but I definitely don't subscribe to Rob Bell's views on hell. And then also, as we move on to the rest of this, it's just kind of like some thoughts on various people that, I don't, and this is I used to call this part of my bookshelf what they think, not necessarily books that I subscribe to the same views, but just kind of like to have on hand to see kind of what people are thinking. And then we've got Moody, I can't remember his first name, but his first two books that were really influential in discussing, the whole near-death experience phenomenon. And so this is a combination of Life After Life and Reflections on Life After Life by Moody. And I think that's an interesting read that, I think in his introduction he really states that he wants to appeal to logic and reason and really think things through, but there are just some huge inconsistencies in that stated goal and some large gaps in logic that are going on in terms of especially the conclusions that either he comes to or that by implication he thinks the readers could be coming to as a result of what he's seen. Then we got Charles Darwin, The Origin of Species. I mean, that's mostly just for reference. I haven't read that all the way through. What do we got? Oh, Jesus Drank, Judas Repented, and God Divorced His Bride by Steve Brown. Another book that there's a number of things in there that I don't agree with, but a number of things that I do. It was just recommended to me a long time ago by someone who was reading my blog. And then let's see, we've got a book on that's published by the Jehovah's Witnesses that I've got. Infant Baptism and Adult Conversion. That's a book supporting infant baptism, which I'm not really a proponent of infant baptism. I don't necessarily poo-poo it. That's I won't get on my thoughts on that right now, but that is a book that's definitely supporting the idea of baptizing infants. Then we got The Shack. Remember that one by Young? Can't remember his first name, but that was a controversial book, but it was really successful in the mainstream. And I read it and I actually really enjoyed it and I thought it was great. I found very little in that book that I would actually say that I have a problem with. Oh, time's running out. Got to finish up here. There would be some things where like, well, you could take that the wrong way, but I could also choose to interpret it easily in a way that is consistent with Scripture. So ultimately, I don't think I had any problems with that. An interesting read. Then we got Sarfati and his book Refuting Compromise, which is an argument for the young Earth view of creation, which I do not subscribe to, but that's a book that I have on hand, kind of as a reference. And then a couple other books by what's his name? Missler. Something. Oh man, it's gonna bug me if I can't remember. Chuck Missler. Okay. And so this one is looking at alien encounters from a biblical perspective. Alien abductions and those kinds of things. Again, I haven't read that all the way through, but it's something that I was curious about and potentially wanting to do, create some fiction of myself on that topic in the future, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. But that was an interesting read. And then lastly, as we wrap up here for this part of the shelf, Cosmic Codes by Missler, and that's again about the Bible code phenomenon and kind of just the way specifically that the Tanakh was written, or maybe it's just specifically the Torah. I can't remember now. But anyway, that's an interesting read, some interesting ideas, not all of which I agree with, but some are very compelling, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but Chuck Missler, Cosmic Codes. So next time, so that was kind of like not a lot of like geek stuff on this part of the shelf. Next time I'll jump up here and we'll definitely get into some more geek stuff as we look at Dragonlance and some movies. We won't get into like my entire movie collection because the bulk of my movie collection is downstairs with my other DVDs, but like I put some of the overflow of my movie collection that I want to keep on hand but don't necessarily think I'll be watching really soon. I put that stuff up here. So we'll start with that next time.
ChristianGeekCentral.com